Hi, so I have with me here today several people that were at the ClaimsXchange Annual Conference in Philadelphia last month, and we wanted to give a little recap of what was good about the conference, what takeaways we had, and maybe some information that they haven't even shared with me yet. So I first have Kathy Gicker, I have Beth Kohler, I have Jason Baker, and I have Dave Dwartz with me today. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see everybody.
So Kathy, since you said thank you first, I'm going to call on you. What can you tell me about the ClaimsXchange Annual Conference that made it different from all the other conferences you've attended in your career?
Well, first of all, the location in Philadelphia could not have been better. It is my hometown, so I'm a little biased on that. But the Ritz-Carlton is just a magnificent building. It was an old bank, and it was an elevated conference as far as sophistication was concerned. Secondly, the registration was quite easy. We had our own private room to do all of that. I felt that the progressive dinner was probably the highlight of the evening entertainment, because that could only be accomplished successfully with the size of the group that attended that conference. And let me add that for me, for my years of working at Allstate, I've had some managerial positions, but for the most part, I was a street level person. And I've gone to a ton of conferences where a progressive dinner of that type would never, ever have been able to be accomplished with the number of people that are at the larger ones. So that made this very unique for me. I think I might have mentioned that my parents used to do them all the time. So I love the whole idea.
Well, Jason, what did you think about the progressive dinner?
Well, so one of the things that was great about the conference was the size of the registration list, and it allowed for a more intimate experience. But Kathy stole a little bit of my thunder. The progressive dinner, I didn't know that's what it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be your typical opening reception, sit down. When I heard it initially, I was like, oh no, right? Just like, how is this going to be executed? Who am I going to be with? Right? If I make a big mess in my first seating, does somebody else get to inherit my mess? And so, no, the way that we moved from one room, one half to the other was great. But I was a little hesitant about embracing it early on, and I thought it was outstanding. It allowed me the opportunity to meet people that I may have not met otherwise, even though it was a smaller group, and I thought it was executed flawlessly. I quite honestly, I don't know why it's never been done before.
Well, Dave, you're shaking your head. Did you know it was going to be a progressive dinner? Because I tried to keep it a secret, but you know how I am with secrets. So did you know it was a progressive dinner before you got there?
I did. I thought I was part of the team that was planning this out. So I knew it was going to be a progressive dinner, and Jason, it scared the heck out of me, right? I was not, I really didn't know how it was going to come off, and exceeded every expectation that I had. Now,
agreed.
So yeah, I went into it knowing it was coming and terrified. And the thought,
what terrified you, Dave?
Well, I mean, the logistics alone, right? I didn't have a picture for the room and how we were going to move from one spot to the other, and just the efficiency of the team that flipped the different sides of the room, and we came back to the front section for the third, groups that we were sat with for desserts, and everything was clean and it was perfectly pulled off. And again, networking, I think one of the great things about the whole couple of days was the networking, but the dinner really played an important part of that, I thought. And 3 different groups, I've followed up and had conversations with at least 1 or 2 people from each of those 3 groups that I got to sit with. So yeah, it was for me the biggest surprise of the event was just how well that was pulled together and executed.
It surprised me too, because I've never done it before. Beth, were you surprised at the progressive dinner, to know that it was a progressive dinner that night?
I was not surprised, because I am one of the few people who had the insight of the work that went into it. And although it did not appear on that night to have been a lot of work, I know the amount of time and energy that you put into preparing for it, and logistically, as everyone has said, making sure that it did flow so beautifully. And while I think a lot of people were awestruck by the venue being at the Union Club, I think that wasn't necessarily the key to the success. I think it was your organization of it, and the fact that beforehand you sent out kind of a, hey, let's start talking about who you know and don't know, to get people mixing and moving. And I think unlike any other organization that I'm part of or have been part of, it had that one-on-one personal quality that I think makes ClaimsXchange so different than organizations that come in just for numbers or just to get the most people. It really had that boutique, unique feel to it. And the progressive dinner really just sold that, and set off for the whole conference, even though it was on the first night, kind of that family feel of an event. And one of the things that I love about ClaimsXchange is the opportunity to have made so many connections and people who are now considered in my inner circle, both work and personal, because of the way you've been able to get everyone pulled together.
Well, thank you. I kind of was asking if it was a surprise because there were some people that didn't show up, because we all know that no one necessarily likes to go to those 3 or 4 hour dinners sitting at a table with 10 people for that long going, what am I? Okay, I've told them about my family. I've told them about what I do for work. And okay, now what? And you're kind of sitting there staring at each other. And so the people that didn't really want to do it after they had registered, we all know that people aren't going to show up. We're very disappointed. And I kind of wanted to make sure that people out there know that you should go to everything, because you never know what I'm going to do. I want to leave, the unexpected at the conferences that we have, because I want people to know that we are a fun organization, and even a 3 hour dinner sitting with what you think is going to be at one table with 10 people turned out to be a really good, fun experience that, while it appeared flawless, was a lot of anxiety on my part, because I thought there were going to be 13 people at table 12 at one point. So it was good. It turned out great for me. It turned out great for everyone. And I was really happy to hear that. But we did kick off the event with a women's networking and a women's event that I know, Kathy, you helped to plan.
Yes.
And Beth, I know you went. What can you tell me about that, Beth, as far as what did you like or did took away from the women's event?
I liked that it started with women, but then included men. The idea that it's us versus them, it needs to be put aside. And diversity, inclusion, women, we really need to make it a global issue within the insurance industry, not just a women versus men. So including the men in the event just really solidified, again, that feeling of camaraderie and family. Certainly having Kathy as the greeter to give me my little card with my little sunflower on it made all the difference, because she is a ray of sunshine and great personality. But then afterwards to be able to converse and meet with not only my women peers, but also the men that support and work with us.
Right. So Kathy, what did you think when you were planning the event? I know we spent hours and hours and hours trying to figure out what we were going to do. Did you think that it came off as well as we had intended?
I did. Certainly we can tweak it for next year. One of the comments, well, several of the comments from the men were, well, where's our wine? Which I thought was pretty hilarious, because so I went upstairs and I grabbed the person from that banquet room where we were and said, give me some bottles of wine. And I brought them downstairs for the men to enjoy. I think we can tighten it up a little bit next year and focus on maybe 3 key elements. We had about 7 and we sort of honed it down. So the discussion occurred with the women, and I think we have a pretty good foundation of items that we can use and piggyback on for next year to expand. But I do think that when we have our meetings about how to design this, that we include the men a little bit earlier on.
I agree. I think so too.
We don't need to have our separate thing and then come later, because What was really cool though, Jim Patillo was very sweet in trying to get men to come. And we did have 8 men that showed up, which was perfect because we had 8 tables. So there was a man at each table. But I really think that if we did more advertising and get those men that were there to kind of talk about how fun it was, that we can enlarge that group and make it more of a global perspective on people working together, not men,
100%.
not women, people working
Well,
together.
but I also think that
With the challenges that we have.
right, for men to understand what some women's issues are,
Exactly.
they're not going to wake up and say, oh, well, I know what they are now. They have to be explained, just as we would have to be explained certain issues that they face that we're not privy to because we're not men. So I think that it becomes an issue that how will anybody, whether it's a man or a female, whoever, how will anybody know to change or what to do differently or how we're feeling unless we don't express that in words and pictures to make sure that everyone is really understanding of what everybody's situation is at any given time. So I think that in order, education is key. Early education is key. And so to continue to educate, everyone about everyone's issues is probably a good idea. So I'm glad we were able to make that work for ourselves and hope that more men show up in the future, because I do think that we provided some really great education during that time.
Well, and really during the whole event, Sydney, you really, the topics and the sizing of the groups really lent towards that understanding and really getting to know the information that was presented.
Dave, what did you think about, where did he go? Oh, he just jumped off. Okay. Jason, what did you think about the education?
I thought it was great. I thought the presentations weren't overly long, right? There's sometimes where you're just filling up space and repeating yourself. I thought it was a very broad list of topics, right? So you could find something that resonated with you or find something that is completely new. The presentations that I sat through, the panels were very engaging, obviously masters of the content in which they were presenting. The only regret I had is there's probably some that I missed that I wish I would have been able to get to, but I thought it was incredibly well done. And I thought the smaller rooms, again, going back to the intimacy, right? I think when you're in a larger auditorium setting or a large group, there's somebody that's going to be an introvert and not want to ask a question, even though there's something that they want to know. And so when it's smaller, I felt like everybody had permission to speak up, ask a question, and engage with the presenters. I thought it was great.
Oh, wonderful. And Kathy, what did you think about the education?
Well, thank you for letting me speak at this moment, because I found them to be very intriguing, some of those topics. And what I found was great at ClaimsXchange was that the attendees were all at a high level. So your VPs, SVPs, directors, and these are the decision makers that we need to continue to bring to this forum so they understand the need for maybe engaging some of their staff to come as well. I sat in on everyone that I was able to do, and the engagement between the audience and the panel was great. It was informal, yet it had solid information. And I think everybody left saying, I learned something new. I went to sessions on things that I know nothing about, and I found it intriguing, interesting. And now I know what to talk about when I'm talking about leases and stuff like that, which I don't know. I only know about nonsense, fraudulent bodily injury. So, expanded my brain a little bit.
Beth, so you are a work comp attorney. Did you sit in anything that wasn't work comp related? And if you did, what did you take away from that?
Actually only sat in on what was not work comp related, just because so much of what I do is work comp. So I wanted to get more into the ethical side, the humanity side of the conference, the seminars that were being offered. The different groupings of people were so well put together that I didn't want to listen to what I already know. I was intrigued by these other topics, by what other people do in their careers, even to the point that so many of the speakers are friends through this organization, and yet I don't know what they do or how they kind of conduct themselves day to day. So to be able to hear people who are not necessarily in what I do, or going to be my direct link for business, was nice just to, again, make those connections and say, oh, hey, I actually know someone who you might be able to use, or the other way around. So to make connections as a third party by listening to other topics was also really nice to do.
So one of the main things when we sent out our surveys, and everyone had a comment about food. So we're going to mention it here. Was the food good?
Yes.
Outstanding.
It was great.
Good. And casino night is how we ended our evening on the second night. Did anybody win anything good?
Does anybody win long-term gambling? Nobody wins.
You're right, exactly. No, but did everybody have a good time at casino night?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
Great.
It started a little slow. Like nobody was really going up to the tables. It was kind of,
Right.
all of a sudden I turned around and got some food. I came back, every table was filled and there was like lots of activity
But
going
they
on.
needed to
So
eat first. They needed
they
to
needed to eat, get a couple drinks, and then they're going to start throwing their money away. Yeah.
So fun things for next year, we are going back to that same exact hotel at the Ritz. We are doing 2 different nights, which I'm not going to share yet because, again, I like to keep things a little bit of a secret. But the second night is going to be super fun. And we are going to make the Progressive Dinner our signature event at our annual, and possibly, depending on size, at all of our conferences, trying to make that first night a night where we can really try to get engagement with as many people as possible, so that one of the people who came up to me said, I'm a huge introvert, and walking into breakfast the first day of a conference always gives me anxiety because I never know anyone, and I get so nervous, and I'm sitting by myself feeling like an outsider, and I walked in and I knew 27 people, and that made me feel really good to know that that's because me not being an introvert, again, I don't know how that feels, walking into a room and being afraid to sit down at a table and talk to someone. So to know that I helped someone, and there's probably others like her out there, that it made it better for her, is how I want to focus the organization to make sure everyone feels super comfortable. But coming up first is our holiday party. Are all of you coming to the holiday party at the end of November?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Can't wait.
We actually have a few more spaces. So if anybody wants to sign up, we have, I think, 3 spaces left. So jump on and get those registrations if you'd like to. Until November 30th. We will see you then. I thank you all so much for your time and for your commitment to ClaimsXchange, and look forward to seeing you not only in November, but in many conferences next year.
Thank you.
You got it.